Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another webinar. My name is Brian Pagano, coming to you from Apigee's headquarters in the quite chilly San Jose, California. And I will let my esteemed colleague introduce himself.
Thanks, Brian. My name is David Apigee. I'm part of the products team, and I look forward to having this great conversation with you today.
Fantastic. This is a good topic. I know we've got a lot of folks on the line. A lot of folks are going to be grabbing the recordings of this afterwards. I think this should be a really good discussion. I want to remind everyone, as always, we've got the content for you to consume however you like to consume your content. We've got the videos up on YouTube, youtube.com/Apigee, and we always put the decks up on SlideShare if you prefer to get your information that way. So with that out of the way, let's really dig into today's topic, which is about handling high traffic. And I know this is of particular interest really to any company because you never want to go down.
That's absolutely true.
But especially retailers.
Exactly.
And so I know that we, this first slide here, now I know we're a fairly humble company and we tend not to, so I know this isn't bragging. What this is supposed to do, I'm assuming, is to grab people's attention as to the severity of traffic spikes,
yes.
Get them a little bit afraid, as you well should be.
Well, it just level sets you. You have, everyone knows that, holiday season, you're going to have more customers coming in and doing things, and that's really translating more and more to mobile online. And so what this is really just trying to illustrate is that we had a really successful, holiday season last year, and a lot of that was due to, all of the things we'll talk about soon. And it's also a lot to do with, how we're really engineering our product to scale to the level that we need to have in a cloud during the holiday season.
Right, because there's a lot of components to, and we're going to dig into this about getting prepared, about handling the events as they're happening. We provide one technology layer, but of course your back-end systems are involved, your presentation tiers are involved, how you're monitoring. There's just a bunch of components that will result in surviving.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's interesting that we think of retail and we think of holiday events as being an obvious low-hanging fruit. A couple years ago, I was talking to a weather provider, right, provider of weather forecasts, and ironically, they said, we can't predict when there's going to be a huge storm or a hurricane or something, or an earthquake or something like that, and all of a sudden, everybody wants to be checking the weather and checking the information every 5 seconds. I just thought it was ironic since their entire job is predicting the weather, and they couldn't predict this, and they were having a huge problem with spikes also, which had nothing to do with holiday traffic, obviously.
Right, so I think that's a great point. It doesn't have to be holiday, it doesn't have to be Black Friday, it depends on your business. It's going to occur when it occurs, and you just have to be prepared in advance for that. So I think the point is that no matter what you do, what your line of business is, going through this exercise, being prepared for the unexpected, is a good thing to do. Yeah,
and I just wanted to really make that point because people can think, oh, I'm not in retail, this might not apply to me so much. Everyone can have spikes. You never know. And it could be as simple as non-malicious. Somebody could have some code that just goes into an infinite loop on an app.
A poorly written app, or, to your point, something more malicious, a denial of service. You have to prepare for every single one of those things. So it's not just business, it's everything.
Exactly, and that can happen no matter what vertical you happen to be in. So we're going to go back in time, and we're going to say somebody is now experiencing a super high traffic event. We're going to freeze time, go back a little bit, and say, what should you do before the high traffic happens?
Exactly. The way that I thought we could talk about this is to frame it before, during, and after. So that's hopefully what we'll be able to accomplish here, in our conversation today.
I love time travel stories, so I'm fully in. So this is great. Okay, so we just said this applies to everyone. Now, some people, like a retailer, it's a little more predictable maybe maybe not. Sometimes a partner does a PR campaign you weren't expecting, and you suddenly get a bunch of traffic. Or a weather event causes everybody to run out and buy a certain kind of clothing.
Or you're a major vendor here in the Valley, and you're very boisterous CEO makes an announcement catching you completely off guard. Right. It just happens all the time here.
Yeah, right on. So knowing that it can happen to any company at any time, and we've got to be prepared, walk us through this a little bit. What does being prepared for high traffic mean?
Well, so I think the thing we have to realize is that the APIs that we publish in our cloud environment are in effect code. So you have to really treat them like code. Even though it's mostly configuration, you still have to think about how can I optimize what I have. So you can always go back and make it more performant, reduce the latency. There's always things you can do there. So what you can do is review the policies perhaps that you've implemented in your proxies. Are you basing your architecture on 2-year-old technology? Are you taking advantage of the latest and greatest things that Apigee has to offer in its cloud? If you're not doing that, go review your code. Make sure that you're taking advantage of whatever we have to offer that's new that perhaps you didn't know about 6 months ago. Make sure you're taking advantage of that. So that's, I think, rule number 1.
So let me make sure I understood that. I want to paraphrase. So people have been building and buying systems for 30, 40 years. We'll call these legacy systems, and
yes.
not intended to disparage them. It's just that they were built for a certain problem that they're solving. That problem was not massive scale, mobile, social, things like that.
Exactly. Web scale was never ever a factor when you're building out, your SOAR layer, in your back end. It's all about governance and really regimented, strict IT, and it just doesn't take into account the chaos of having millions or billions of people using your product.
Right. And so you're suggesting a technology like Apigee put on top of those enterprise systems provides you something of a bridge between this issue we're talking about of high traffic, the mobile, all these things we're discussing, and these legacy systems.
It does. And over time, the other point is that Apigee's leadership in this space continues to evolve and grow, and so we continue to introduce new technologies into our stack. So make sure that you're aware of those technologies. A great example is Node.js. Many of our customers are using it, many aren't. So if you're not using it and there's value to perhaps exploring that, do so. Make sure you're using what Apigee has to offer. Evaluate your APIs, whether they're the back end or the middle tier in Apigee, or maybe it's the client. Maybe you need to reevaluate the use of the client technology that you're using. Look through the entire stack, make sure you're optimizing for whatever that event might be.
Yeah, right on. And I would think that caching would be huge with the possibility of offloading weight from the legacy backend.
Exactly. One of the things that Apigee, one of the really valuable things that Apigee adds is that ability to not only to orchestrate API flows, but to cache information that's static or even dynamic in some cases. So if I have a user that likes to hit the refresh button, over and over again, I can cache that information and protect my back end from that, abuse.
Yeah.
So caching is certainly something that literally every one of our customers can take advantage of. There's, really no use case that I can think of in which caching could not add some sort of value.
Right, and that's easy enough to set up ahead of time.
It is extraordinarily simple. It's a drag and drop operation, or it's it's a couple of lines of config code if you're creating your proxies in Eclipse or another editor.
Right, so really no excuse to be in the heat of battle and not have those set up. Okay, great. So I think that most companies, retail or not, are seeing an increase in traffic. We have, one of the reasons I'm guessing is we have far more devices generating traffic than we used to. We're connected all the time now, so we can hit refresh anywhere instead of just when we're at our computers.
And if you're like some of us, you actually have 2 or 3 devices, probably all pinging those things. You've got your watch, you've got your phone, you've got your iPad, you have your MacBook Pro, whatever it is, you've got multiple devices all now interacting with these APIs. So not only do you have more users, more audience, but your single individuals are actually using you more than once.
Yeah, exactly. And then we add in the cars and the smart home devices and the athletic equipment, all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Probably almost every company and every vertical is going to see increased traffic. And since most traffic will be through an API, whether it's web device or mobile, we can assume that this is not going to go away. People are only going to see more and more traffic. And that's what the data we've been seeing definitely indicates.
Totally agree, and that's a good thing. I mean, this is connecting you to the entire world. Why wouldn't you want to increase that?
Right, and so I noticed you mentioned the analytics here. I'm guessing that that's one of the most powerful tools someone can use to try to figure out, no one can predict the future, we just talked about that, but to figure out how to prepare.
Yeah, so preparing, there's really a couple of approaches. One, you just guess, and that's usually you take a multiple of non-holiday traffic or non-peak traffic and multiply it by 5 or 10 just to be on the safe side. That's a very conservative, very traditional way of estimating. But yes, analytics, especially edge analytics, can play a really powerful role in coming up with an exact estimate of what you should expect. You can use edge analytics based on the past 2 or 3 months leading up to the event. You can use Edge Analytics to look back a year to see how it went last year. You can use Apigee Insights in combination with Edge Analytics to do journey analytics and predictive analytics to get a better understanding of exactly what kind of traffic you should expect to see during that peak event.
Okay, so worst case, take a guess, use some heuristic like 5 to 10, and best case, look at the historical data and the recent data, the leading indicators.
Yes.
And the optimal case is then to plug it into the predictive engine and say, okay, what are the models actually tell us we should be expecting?
Exactly.
Perfect. Testing, no, I mean, why would anybody test?
That's a great question. There's a couple of reasons to test. The testing conversation we'll focus on now is really load testing. And so, in effect, load testing helps you understand how your system behaves under certain conditions. It's not that it's functionally, working correctly. It is it able to handle the traffic? Is your backend able to handle the traffic? Are you effectively using Apigee policies, caching, for instance, to improve your ability to take on additional load? So it's really about understanding the behavior of your system in a real-world environment.
Okay, because I'm guessing things like the basic smoke tests and functional tests, I mean, that doesn't really, that applies to one request as it does to a million requests. So it's more the load.
It is the load. So there's a couple of things that we see our customers doing, really throughout the year, but especially during peak times. One, they do operational testing, so they're constantly checking to make sure that the APIs that they've got out there are responsive. So if I do a health check on a specific API, I'm testing from the middle tier clear back to the end, and I know based on that health check that everything is fine. So that's the first thing. We don't see a lot of functional testing in production, but customers do that. But load testing, the ability to stretch your system, to vary the traffic so you can see how the whole system behaves over a period of time. Soak testing to make sure that you haven't introduced memory leaks into either the middle tier or the back end. Those are all really good things to do in preparation for that peak event.
So do most companies do this kind of stress testing in the production environment, or do they try to create a mirrored staging environment?
Well, I think they do it in both. So you don't want to start putting load on a production system when it's not ready to handle that load. So you want to make sure that the APIs that you published are going to be able to handle that in a safe environment. But yes, once you've convinced yourself of that, then you do want to load test your production environment, because that's really the only place that it matters.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're confident that your pre-prod environment works, and you don't test your production environment and it falls over, well, that's just...
Right. No, I see what you're saying. If it looks good on the whiteboard and you're so confident that all your earlier testing pans out, why not try it out for sure before the event?
Exactly. Theory has absolutely no value in production.
Exactly. Yes. Just like a software demo has no business functioning on stage.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So that to me was a very interesting point, because years as a technology executive, the idea of somebody coming and saying, "Hey Brian, let's test this in our production systems," still sends shivers down my spine. But I guess in this case, what you're saying is true. There's really no other way around it. If you want to know if your production environment can stand up to it, you got to throw the chaos monkey at it.
Exactly, and we see customers in our cloud doing this all the time. In fact, we see the traffic, we observe it, and then we're surprised when the traffic decreases, and we realize, oh, they were just doing load tests in our cloud. Well, that's great that they're doing that. It's amazing that they're so confident that their code is correct that they're willing to do that.
I agree. I think that's fantastic. I did not know that. Okay, so we've talked about a few things people can do to get ready: testing the performance environment, making sure you're using backend as a service, setting up policies like caching, and make sure you're leveraging that edge technology as much as possible to reduce load on the legacy systems. But then inevitably comes the event itself.
Yes, the event occurs, and all that prep work that you did, all the review that you did, introducing caching, moving your product catalog from your backend system into API BAS in our cloud, optimizing your own backend and optimizing your proxies, all of that work. Now what? Well, so the focus on the during part of this should really be on monitoring. You don't really want to make any changes unless they're P0, absolutely critical issues that need to be fixed. What you want to do is now focus on monitoring. So you can again use analytics. It's a lot like the conversation we just had around the before testing. All of that stuff that you learned, how to load test, how to observe the data, how to understand what the data means. Now it's time to take advantage of that and just observe what's going on, monitor your traffic, and if and when something unexpected happens, now you know how to react to it. Now you've done all that load testing, you understand what stress on your system is going to do, so you can recognize the symptoms of your environment being overly stressed. And you can auto scale in our cloud. You can add new target servers in your own data center, whatever the case may be.
So that's really interesting. If I understood you correctly at the beginning, you were saying while you need to be heavily monitoring, you need to resist the urge to tinker. I'm guessing because A, it's in production, and B, it's during a high traffic event.
Right, and that not only applies to customers, but that also applies to Apigee. We don't typically deploy new code in the last quarter of the year because we want a very stable, very reliable, very predictable environment.
Right, so you're saying unless it's the highest, so if a customer is really monitoring, unless something is extremely high priority, like it's going to be blocking business from getting done, basically just log it, learn from it, analyze it afterwards, but don't tinker with the system.
Yes, capture all of that information, have a post-mortem, and learn from that so that next time around, at least that issue won't occur. You'll have a whole other new set of issues to deal with, but at least it won't be this one. It'll be something better.
Right on. I think that is so far that's my favorite tip, because I think I, like everybody else, would have been saying, well, I've got a tool that tells me what's going on, and I got a tool that allows me to make changes. I mean, why don't I just go for it? But no, resist.
Resist
Yeah.
Resist if possible.
All right, and then we're back to testing again. So tell me how testing fits into during the event scenario.
Well, just like with any other time of the year, you always want to do API health checks. So you know that the API, the functionality that you put out there, is behaving as you expect it to behave. And oftentimes that's going to fail, and it's going to fail for a couple of reasons. It's going to fail because you have a partition event, a network outage. It could be that your target servers are overloaded or are not behaving properly, or someone slipped in a code change that had a cascading effect upwards. So you want to monitor all year round, but especially during peak times, the basic API functionality that you publish out there.
So are we talking about like something that's generating synthetic transactions that goes through so you can see what the customers are seeing?
Yes, it could be a synthetic transaction. It could be it could be load balancer health checks, just pinging the back end just to make sure that it's still listening. Lots of different ways to do that. Yeah, but synthetics are always a good thing to do. Typically, an API is going to exist in a use case with 2 or 3 APIs, so you want to make sure that you're testing the use case in addition to the individual APIs.
Right, because all the lights could be green on every layer and every tier, but unless you see the end-to-end from the customer's point of view, you don't really know how it's looking.
Exactly, and again, that's really the only thing that matters. It's what the customer sees. It's not what you think is right, it's what the customer sees and what the customer experiences. And so testing the APIs in the sequence that your app uses them, whether it's synthetic or whether it's individual, great idea.
See, that's another fascinating tip for me because it seems so counterintuitive. So during a high peak traffic event, I'm going to inject extra traffic into the system. You know what I mean? That's very counterintuitive, but you're absolutely right. Unless I do that, yeah. I honestly don't know how the holistic journey end-to-end is going.
Exactly. So let me just be a little bit more clear. I'm not suggesting that you load test during the peak event.
Right.
So there's a difference between load testing and health checks.
Sure.
So load testing before the load, you're basically load testing over in the peak event because you're generating real live traffic. So that information is really valuable. But yes, always health check. That learned that 15 years ago. It's amazing how sometimes brittle distributed systems can be. So you want to make sure that it works end to end.
Yeah, no, fantastic. That's I've definitely picked up a couple of tips that seem counterintuitive to me until you explain them, and then of course it's the obvious thing to do. So we're to Back to the Future 3 here, right? We're going, which I never saw. I think that's the
That was the best one.
Was that the one in the West, or was that the one in the future? No, 2 was in the future. Marty's supposed to arrive in our time in a couple of months.
3 was the West.
And 3 was the Old West. So yeah,
with the train.
I've got to get back. I loved the first one, and I've never gotten back. And I'm a sucker for time travel stories. All right, so Back to the Future 3 in the Old West. So the event is now. We mean by after the event has subsided, where traffic has gone back to normal pre-event levels.
Well, so I think the conversation we had earlier really is starting to resonate with the presentation. We were talking specifically about Black Friday. So what's next after Black Friday? Well, it's Cyber Monday. Then it's the day after Christmas, and then it's the New Year's clearance stuff that goes on. But regardless of the industry, there's always going to be a what's next. Your weather example, the earthquake events in Concord are hopefully over for a few weeks, and so they'll get back to normal, but it'll happen again. And so they're going to need to take all of that information they learned, all that postmortem data that they've collected. They're going to go back and reevaluate what they've got, and they're going to make it even better.
I totally get that. So when I was a CTO of a company over in Italy one time for several years, and that was when the prequels for Star Wars were going on. We'll just keep making this geeky. But anyway, I hadn't seen the movie in English because they dubbed it in the movie theaters, and I'm a big Star Wars fan. So the day it came out, I went to the big store nearby me and said, "Hey, do you have any copies of the DVD?" And the person kind of said, "No, we sold them all." And he was thinking like we had an event, there was a rush on this DVD, we survived the event, we're done. Not realizing there's still demand. There's still people who, it's going on. There wasn't a one-time thing. And I think what you're saying is there's a lot of people who could just kind of, mop their forehead and say, well, we survived. We survived today. It's all over. And you're saying, well, no, there's a next event and a next event.
And I think that's a fundamental aspect of the digital economy. The events don't occur once per year. They occur more and more often. And that's a good thing. Yeah, the semi-truck is going to back up to that store with a whole nother load of those DVDs, and they're going to have another rush on the store. So It's going to happen over and over again.
Yeah, to not look at it as just a one-time historical event, but to learn as much as you can from it and know that it's coming again in one form or another. Maybe worse. Hopefully worse.
Hopefully worse, because worse is actually good business.
Exactly, though I know a lot of customers get worried about catastrophic success. Like if you're so successful, you have such a good day that your systems all melt down. I've noticed a lot of people have this kind of fear out there of catastrophic success.
I hope that the cloud begins to change the thinking on that, because I actually look at it the exact opposite. I look at it as an opportunity to make your systems even better than they are, to get better at what you do. It's just a great opportunity. So I look at it in a positive way.
Yeah, right on. I mean, I've noticed that the ordering of the Apple products, right, being in Silicon Valley, we're required by law to order the night that any Apple product is released.
Yes.
And
I had to sign the paper when I moved here.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but I've noticed that the ordering has been getting smoother and smoother each time. Like the Apple Watch, it only took me about 14 minutes to get the order through, whereas the iPhone 6 was, I don't know, maybe half an hour to get it all through, because the load is incredible. So clearly they are following this advice, and they're learning, and they're getting more prepared, and they're getting better for each event.
I think you're right. In fact, years ago it used to be standing in line for a couple of days just to get that shiny new iPhone. Now it's, like you said, it's placing an order and letting Amazon deliver it to your front door.
Yeah, when you say it like that, now it sounds like a zeroth world problem, right? That I had to wait 14 minutes to order the watch from my sofa. Yes. So I think one of the messages that I take out there when I'm talking to customers and prospective customers, a lot of folks are just getting started with this. They know enterprise really well. They know the legacy IT really well, but this is kind of new for them. The fact that they're on 50 devices instead of just a web app or a thick client app.
Right.
The fact that they've got partners or third parties building apps that are generating traffic is much less predictable. And I always try to remind them, this may be your first time. It's not our first time.
No, we actually are getting really, really good at this. Our entire organization is focused on this technology. We have professional services, we have the product team, we have enthusiasts throughout the world. We're on Stack Overflow, we host our own community. We have a world-class support team. Any one of those sources is a great place to start to learn how to do this. And everyone that I've encountered so far is just totally excited about helping other people out.
Yeah, well, there's really no substitute for experience, right? You can't buy that. Working with as many of the retailers that we do, we've experienced a couple of Black Fridays in a row right now with most of the Fortune 1000 retailers. For example, as a high traffic, we've also had them with our telecommunications companies. We were working with the Olympics broadcast recently. We were powering a lot of the authentication for that. So we've seen some of these events, and when you get a bunch of smart people, like our customers have also, the ability for smart people to learn from these events and get better, there's no price tag on it. You can't buy it.
That's absolutely true, and that's what we do day in and day out, all year long. So one of the things that I can say is that if you're just getting into this, if you're a retailer or you're the Weather Channel, whatever the case may be, reach out to us and start asking us questions. We would be more than happy to answer them. We have a great way to engage. There's lots of actually different great ways to engage. But every single one of us here at Apigee loves to talk about this, loves to help solve problems. So give us a call or send us an email.
Absolutely, I think that's very true. We really love this subject, and I've never seen a company so willing to freely share the information, and that's because we're a product company.
It's kind of almost like a kind of a disease, the fact that we feel compelled to share.
We do really love this. Yeah, but that's because we've seen the results that our customers have had. So
yeah.
It's definitely a win-win kind of situation. So we do have one question. So we come up with our own traffic projections, and then what steps do we need to take to make sure that Apigee and that their systems and services and all the tiers will be able to actually, it's great to have a projection.
Yes.
So this is what we need to support X TPS, but how do we ensure that we actually can support that?
Once you know what your projected volumes are going to be, let us know. Open a support ticket with our support team, get a conversation going, share the projection, let them know what your expectations are. We do a pretty good job of auto scaling, so we should be able to handle it for you, but having knowledge of that in advance is always going to be a better thing. So let us know what your projections are. We'll make sure that we'll be able to meet your demand.
Yeah, I'm sure we could always take a look at some policies or things like that, just see that
this
makes sense, this passes the sniff test or doesn't.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything that needs to be done, we will make sure that it gets done for you.
And I think the obvious corollary question to that is, and it just came in, is okay, so I'm on premises, so I've got an installation like normal enterprise software, and now I'm trying to figure out in this infrastructure whether or not my setup is going to be able to handle the load or not. How do I ensure that?
So, because you basically taking responsibility for your own operation, there's a little bit more work that I think needs to be done for on-prem customers. But basically the algorithm is the same. You prepare, you review, you predict, and then all of that information you gathered you use during the peak event. A couple of things that can be done if you deployed in multiple data centers, make sure that you're balancing the traffic between them effectively. You could almost go to a point where you're redirecting traffic, to ensure that you're fully utilizing, what you purchased. You can always come back to your sales rep and add gateway nodes if you think that's necessary. Lots of different things that can be done. Some customers really like to scale up their own backends, during peak events for on-prem, because most of our on-prem customers are, in the ridiculously high ranges of transactions, so they already have a pretty significant investment in hardware.
Sure, and then of course there's always the Apigee community where you can try to learn from each other and see if somebody else in a similar situation has some tips for you, or even some policies they're willing to share after being genericized.
Yeah, and exactly. And you can still reach out to our support team, open a support ticket. You can engage customer success or professional services team. You can, if you're doing a QCR, every quarter, let the person on the phone know that you want to talk about that and get prepared, reevaluate the platform. Lots of different things we can do.
Excellent. I mean, the bottom line is the chances are, in any given scenario, somebody has been struggling with it or already solved it, and so you want to get that expertise and avoid those landmines if possible.
Yes.
Perfect. So I think that's all the questions we've got right now, and so I want to thank everybody for joining us. We do have a follow-up to this webinar coming in the Back to the Future 4 kind of future. We have a webcast coming with our customer LL Bean, which ought to be very interesting to this crowd also, and that'll be on May 28th at 11 a.m. Pacific time. and we hope to see a lot of you joining us on that one. David, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Brian.
This was a lot of fun. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your day, and have a great week.